Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this session of Quispamsis Town Council. I'd like to have an approval of the agenda, please. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. I have a few comments this evening, but before I begin tonight, I'd like to remind people that December 6 marks the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. Tonight, we remember all those who have experienced gender-based violence and those who have lost their lives to it, including the 14 young women killed at École Polytechnique in Montreal on this day back in 1989. Flags outside the Quispamsis Town Hall are half-mast in recognition of this remembrance. I'd also like to ask the somber question, are we pleased with where we are today, 33 years later? For my remarks, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us for a couple of recent holiday-related events for the town of Quispamsis. We held our annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony at the Arts and Culture Park on November 23rd. There was definitely a feeling of winter in the air as more than 1,000 people helped us usher in the holiday season with hundreds of LED lights. Thank you to Tim Hortons for providing coffee and hot chocolate for the event, and to NB Power for the gingerbread cookies. The lights will remain on throughout the holiday season. And congratulations to our winners of the Solar Charger Power Bank contest from the tree lighting ceremony. Winners were selected by a random draw and all have been notified. Those of us on the Climate Change Committee had an opportunity to meet the winners and do a little photo tonight just before this meeting. And the 10 chargers were provided by the Quispamsis Climate Change Committee. Still with the Arts and Culture Park, preparations are now underway to open the outdoor skating rink. Please follow our social media pages for the latest rink information on the opening date. The 24th annual KB Santa Claus Parade took place on November 26th. It was a wonderful evening with the floats decorated beautifully and so many of you along both sides of the route. For the second consecutive year and the second year of the competition, the town of Quispamsis was awarded the Best Town Float Friendly Competition Award. Special thanks to the parade walkers who logged a lot of steps alongside our float. Neither the parade nor the tree lighting could happen without the dedication of our town of Quispamsis staff. Thank you for all your hard work in helping bring the holiday spirit to our community. The town's recreation master plan open house last month was very well attended. The plan will guide the town's decision-making in that area for the next 10 years. Feedback from the open house will be taken into account in a public presentation of the final document in the new year. Also in November, I was privileged, along with Mayor Nancy Grant of Rothsay, to attend the Kennebecasis Regional Joint Board of Police Commissioners honor and award ceremonies held at the Rothsay Town Hall. 4 civilians were also recognized for actions they took to help people in need. Sergeant Evan Scott and Sergeant Colin Flynn received Police Exemplary Service Medals. And I had the wonderful privilege of bestowing Constable Dylan Lisson with the Board of Commissioners Commendation. Congratulations to all, and thank you for the service that you provide to the Kennebecasis Valley. A few reminders as I wrap up tonight's remarks. The town of Quispamsis is very excited to host Team Finland and Team USA in an exhibition game before the start of the 2023 IIHF World Junior Hockey Championship. The game will take place Monday, December 19th at the Q-Plus. Tickets for the game sold out in less than 2 hours. We are able to present this game in conjunction with Hockey Canada and in accordance with our commitment to sport tourism. For anyone using driveway markers to aid in snow removal, please have these markers set back from the roadway to allow our snowplow operators to do their jobs safely and effectively. Markers set too close to the roadway can get knocked down and possibly damage our vehicles. Residents with portable basketball nets are asked to remove them from public streets in preparation of snow clearing as well. Whoever thought we'd be asking you to move your basketball nets mid-December? And the many trails in our community are available for everyone to use year-round, and we're happy to have you out on our trails. But please remember that dogs are required to be on leashes when on trails or any land owned by the town of Quispamsis. Those wishing to let their dogs off leash can do so at the Homestar Dog Park, and pets are not permitted on any local fields. Thank you. Those are all the comments I have this evening. We will move forward to Councillor Miller to provide us with the treaty acknowledgement and moment of reflection. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to respectfully acknowledge that Quispamsis exists on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik, Maliseet, and Micmac people, whose ancestors, along with the Passamaquoddy tribe, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s. We would like to take this time to pay respect to the elders, past and present, and the descendants of this traditional territory. We also would like to take a moment to reflect on our solidarity and support for the people of Ukraine, acknowledging that Canada has the third largest Ukrainian population in the world, behind Ukraine itself and Russia. And may we remind ourselves of the important work we have before us tonight. May we make good decisions without prejudice or bias and always in the best interest of our community, which we are here to serve.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Looking for disclosure of interests. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yes, Your Worship, 9B.
Let the record show Deputy Mayor Scryer will remove herself on 9B. Presentations. Public presentation, 247 Hampton Road, rezoning application proposed medical clinic, residential R1 to neighborhood commercial NC. Also, ladies and gentlemen, we have an architect, I believe, at the or online with us as well. So welcome this evening. If you could please give your name for the clerk.
Sure.
Just 1 second. Natalie Graves. Welcome, Natalie, and I'm going to let you go forward. This is an information session this evening before we go to a public hearing.
I think there are some slides. I don't know if they're available for the group to view. That looks great. Perfect. So good evening, and thank you so much for allowing us to present our proposal for the development of a medical clinic at 247 Hampton Road. We have an accepted offer on the property and are submitting this application before council to have it rezoned for our use. You can go to the next slide. Thanks. So I'm Dr. Natalie Graves, my sister, Dr. Monica Graves. We work across the street. We've been in the community for a number of years. We serve over 2,000 patients in the area. We're keen to stay here. You can go to the next slide. So our proposal is to have the property at 247 Hampton Road rezoned to central commercial. I understand there's been a bit of a discrepancy between the members of the staff of the town and us. The agenda for tonight states that we're looking to have it rezoned for neighborhood commercial purposes. So if that's the means that we have to go through, then we can do that. Ideally, we would have this zoned central commercial because we have hopes and ambitions to bring a third physician into the practice at some point. And this would, as I understand it, the neighborhood commercial would stipulate that only 2 physicians can be practicing. So be it as it may, it needs to be rezoned. So these are the plans that we have moving forward. We feel as though our medical practice would be an appropriate use for the property for a few reasons, one of which is that it is on the main road in Quispamsis. It's presently operating as a business. It has a hair salon attached to a residential dwelling and has been operating in that capacity for years. And there is a precedent for other properties along the Hampton Road being rezoned for commercial purposes very nearby. We think it's a good fit for a medical clinic because of its location, its size, the interior layout and existing structure would work well for us. It already has parking, and it would be accessible for our patients with the main level. Just to give you an idea of the operations and what the traffic might look like between the two of us, given kind of our busy schedules that sometimes frequently take us outside of the office, we would see between 0 and 35 patients in an average workday, and we see patients on weekdays only during regular office hours. Virtual medicine has kind of changed the volume of people that we're seeing in person, so that would help to reduce some of the foot traffic. And between the two of us, we employ 1.5 additional staff. So perhaps of most interest to council would be the changes to the exterior and the site itself. Specifically, our needs would require the building of a wood entrance ramp for accessibility for our patients. We would plan to add trees and shrubs along the perimeter of the property to help provide added buffer with surrounding neighborhood residential properties. The parking lot that is existing would remain as is. We don't have any intentions of expanding capacity for parking, with the exception of removing the back deck from the building for the purposes of staff parking, not patient parking. Great, you're keeping up with me. That's great. Thank you. So this is a picture of the southwest side of the building that faces the Lake Road, and where you can see that pathway would be where our wood ramp would go. We would add a new concrete pathway from the parking lot towards the front entryway. The little deck and side door that you're seeing kind of front and center of this picture would remain as is and serve as an emergency exit. And the red car that you see behind the building would be where staff would park. You can't see it in this photo, but the deck that we would have removed is on the back side of the building. We feel this project would integrate well with the surrounding area. We're really making limited changes to the exterior of the building. The patient parking abuts the streets. It's not adjacent to, homes or dwellings nearby. The building entrance itself and where all of the foot traffic would be going is towards Hampton Road. And as I mentioned before, we would be operating with standard business hours. Very rarely would we be seeing people after 5 p.m. Or ever on weekends. This slide just shows an overhead view of the site itself, showing you the projected sites for parking around the perimeter of the building. Again, we would add some shrubs and trees for an added buffer, although there are some that are present already. So that gives you a sense of, the extent of the site development. And the next slide kind of reviews the interior renovations. Not that these are, I think, as relevant, but what is currently a living and dining room will hopefully someday be a waiting and reception area. We would add a new washroom to the first level that's barrier-free and accessible for our patients. And the exam rooms would be in the area that's currently occupied as a hair salon. The upstairs portion we would convert into medical offices and have 2 overflow exam rooms. So the next slides will show you the layout and the floor plan. So you can see on the right-hand side of the slide, reception and waiting area. And as you move towards the left-hand side of the slide, you can see the patient examination areas and the wood ramp, kind of that zigzag out front that you can see. And then the final slide would just be the plans of the upstairs. So certainly we appreciate your time and consideration for our application and would welcome any questions that you might have.
Thank you for informing us of your intentions, and I will go to Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to Dr. Monica and Dr. Natalie Graves for the presentation. I think it's wonderful that you want to stay in Quispamsis, and really, to your point, the location is very conducive to what you're proposing. So I just want to thank you, and I think it's wonderful that you do you want to stay in the valley and offer medical services? So I will move that council set a public hearing date for January 17th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Refer the proposal to PAC for written views and notify property owners within a 100-meter radius of the property proposed for rezoning.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. It's been moved by Councillor Luck. I'm going to get a seconder on that before I go to Mr. Colburn. And it's seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. And I'm going to go now to Mr. Colburn, our planning officer.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to council and to Mrs. Graves. So it was pointed out that the applicant in the presentation that the desire to change it to central commercial, and the staff report as well as the agenda noted as neighborhood commercial, and the desire to in the future see a third position operate or be at the building at this location. When we look at land uses and we look at the zones, we also have to sort of look at when you rezone to a particular zoning designation, what you're opening up that land to. So it's just not specifically one particular item. If you zone it, for example, central commercial, you're opening it up to all the permitted uses that would be in a central commercial zone. Neighborhood commercial provides in the zoning bylaw up to 2 physicians. However, council has the authority through the rezoning process to permit more than 2 physicians at this particular property or this particular location as a condition of the rezoning process. Precedent has been set of a similar nature. 317 Hampton Road, which is a dental clinic that originally had 2 physicians. They came back through council and the council extended it to permit 3 dentists at that particular location. So the authority is there, the mechanism is there to extend beyond the two physicians as is noted in neighborhood commercial. With that being said, we can, from a staff perspective, we can reach back to our solicitor and say if we were to put it out as central commercial in the rezoning public hearing process, public notification, what ramifications that would have. So the request or the saying that we're going to a neighborhood commercial doesn't, from a planning perspective, all of a sudden create a barrier to moving forward. What's being examined is the actual land use itself. So the building's going to be used for medical practice and up to potentially 3 physicians. So that would be put out to the public as part of the public notice. So just sort of a way of clarification that discrepancy shouldn't prohibit the thing from moving forward to a public hearing stage as long as public notice is done accordingly. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Colburn. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. I just had one question because I didn't see the answer in here. As far as signage for your new facility, is it going to be just a wooden sign? Is it going to be lit up? Whereabouts is that going to be on the...
Yet, but I can assure you it won't be anything that's flashing or electric. Like we might have like a wooden sign with a light that's projected on it, but there's no kind of plans for anything beyond that.
Yeah. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's great. And thank you to Mr. Colburn for his comments because it kind of was right in the middle of what I was thinking about. That is to say that, if we open to central commercial, what does that mean? I was going to ask what some examples of other central commercial businesses that might seek to set up in a similar situation might be and what impact that might have on the neighborhood. Clearly, a medical clinic is something that most people would find to have would be enviable to have in a community. So anyway, thanks very much for that. And the idea of a variance, perhaps, to maintain neighborhood commercial but apply a variance for a third position, I think that sounds interesting to me. But at the very least, I appreciate you pointing out how it shouldn't be, sort of stayed from moving forward to a public hearing on the basis of what that zoning would be exactly. I just wonder, Dr. Graves, if you could elaborate on the search for a third physician, or that is to say, do you have sort of a short and long-term vision of when that would be and so on, or are you now seeking someone?
Yes. Yep, we're in active conversations. We both teach a fair bit, residents and medical students, so we have access to a lot of medical learners, many of whom are keen to stay in the area, and it would be a very attractive opportunity
For sure.
as a young physician to have something to walk into and not have to worry about the business aspect of it. So yes, we certainly have a short list of people that are being considered. We work very well together, and so it would have to be the right fit, right? So it's kind of about finding a
So in your mind's eye, can you give any kind of a
within the next year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
that would
Thank you
be
very-
ideal. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bigger. Deputy Mayor Scryer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your presentation, doctors. I have two questions. One has to do with the parking. So at the front of the house, not the side door, but what the actual frontage, will that now be parking there in the front, or you're going to leave that landscaped the way it is? Okay,
Only addition would be the ramp to the front.
the ramp.
Yeah, the parking would stay as it is. We're not paving anything that's not presently paved.
Thank you. And my second question has to do going towards a collaborative practice. I know you stated that you wouldn't be open in the evenings per se right now, but is there potential for you both to look towards a collaborative practice? And if so, that would change some of the dynamics in the hours of operation?
It's possible. I think you're alluding to the province's family medicine initiative. We've not, I guess, joined in on that initiative as of now. We both work at the hospital delivering babies at least a night or two a week. So we work a lot of evenings as it is outside of the office. And our teaching responsibilities sometimes bleed over into the evening. So that's not something that I anticipate or I project. It is a possibility, like if the government is kind of trying to push physicians more out of a fee-for-service model into that hybrid model that promotes collaborative care, that could be something that might come up.
Thank you. I just bring it up because it may affect a zoning if you're going to change your hours. Maybe, perhaps not, perhaps it wouldn't. So I just wanted to get your ideas on that. And I am familiar with that particular building. And so upstairs is going to be offices, or you said overflow?
3 physician offices where we would do paperwork and virtual medicine, and then 2 overflow exam rooms. So patients that are able to walk stairs, we'd have 2 extra examination rooms for those folks upstairs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Thompson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation, doctors. I have, through you, Your Worship, to Dwight. I'm just curious, what I'm seeing on the presentation is central commercial, but what you were stating was it still could be neighborhood commercial with, we could also add in that there could be another physician there. So then if that is the case, then the presentation should be neighborhood commercial rather than central commercial, which is much, that end of it is much harder to pass. People are less apt to be receptive because that stays with the property.
We'll let Mr. Dwight respond.
Yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so the ask or what was in the presentation was central commercial, and what staff, during our initial meetings, there were some conversations about it, and staff presented it as neighborhood commercial. So although the presentation notes it as central commercial, it comes down to what is presented to the public in a notice that's put out to the public, so they have all that information. So the fact that the staff report and what we're presenting to council from a staff perspective and planning perspective is neighborhood commercial. Again, that shouldn't stay the process from moving forward, because there is a mechanism of being able to add the additional physician in the neighborhood commercial zone. So it shouldn't have any impact on the actual moving forward to the public hearing stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Did you have a follow-up, Councillor Thompson? I see your light flashing. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Colburn. Can you clarify what exactly it would look like, the difference between neighborhood commercial and central commercial? I guess I see two business people in front of us. You know, at the end of the day, they are a small business. It's on Hampton Road. And I would, you know, again, I'd like to make sure that we kind of put the right terminology to their proposal, just so that they have the flexibility in the future if they so choose to expand.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. We'll go to Mr. Colburn for a response.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just bear with me for a second. So on central commercial, what happens is once you rezone the lands as central commercial, then you're falling into the permitted uses that are designated under that. So some of the permitted uses would be things like banks, financial institutions, shopping centers, retail centers, and you're getting into restaurants and those types of things. So it broadens the land use. So what ultimately happens from a planning perspective, you have less restrictive measures. So simply somebody comes in and says, I want to open up a retail shop right there. It's a permitted use, which means it doesn't go to council, it doesn't go to planning advisory committee, and it becomes a bit of a challenge in terms of what the impacts that could come from that land use on the residential properties as well. So that's sort of what happens is when you go to a central commercial zone versus a neighborhood commercial zone, the intent of a neighborhood commercial zone is to have uses that are less impactful on the residential or adjacent properties and is more fitting to a residential or a neighborhood area.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Oh. Go ahead, Councillor Luck.
Now I hope I can remember it. I just had a moment. I did, but I lost it.
We can come back. All right.
On just this kind of the rezoning and the ins and outs of neighborhood commercial versus commercial. So we've got a solid, 25 years of practice probably ahead of us. We don't want, we're not in, the development game. We don't want to flip this and, sell it. And our long-term projected goals would be to sell this to future family physicians, 20, 25 years from now, to continue to have it as a medical practice in the community. And we think that, just as Councillor Luck was stating, having the freedom and the flexibility to not have to come back to council, to not have to reapply if we were wanting to expand to bring on a fourth physician down the road would be ideal for us. And my first priority is practicing medicine and caring for my patients, but I am also a business person and I am trying to make a sound decision. And I think given the precedent that's been set along that strip of the road, the fact that it's been operating as a business and that it is on the main road, that I would appreciate your consideration for rezoning this for central commercial as the application that we submitted stated.
Thank you, Dr. Natalie. Mr. Colburn.
Through you, Your Worship. So if it was to go through central commercial, there's still a development agreement that would have to be drafted and going against the property. And then there's terms and conditions that go in that development agreement that would restrict or further restrict the use of that particular land under the central commercial zone. So the development agreement could state that it's a medical clinic for no more than 3 physicians, and then if there's a fourth, they'd have to come back, or you can expand it. But then you have to look at what is the ultimate capacity of that land to handle more than 3 or 4 physicians. At what point do you need to move your practice to another property? And does that mean that it stays at, a medical facility for up to 3 physicians? And then if there's another doctor or doctors who are interested in purchasing the land, then that's the restriction they're entering into. Again, at this point, as I mentioned before, planning staff can take it back. We can communicate with the solicitor to get some direction in terms of whether we have to start the process over, or if we can simply post as in terms of the public hearing that is going to central commercial versus neighborhood commercial.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to be clear on the zoning. My understanding is that the central commercial would ultimately, it goes with the land. If the land is sold down the road, the zoning goes with the land, so that whatever, once it's zoned central commercial, whoever purchases that property could use it for other things as well. So that that's the difference. But the applicant did apply for central central commercial. So what I'm concerned about is if I don't want it to be delayed on the applicant's side as well. You know, if we're talking about going back and saying, well, it should be, let's change it to central commercial, what does that do to the timelines that are actually set out right now? Because I believe the public session open hearing is slated for January, and I don't know how that affects the applicant with their timelines as well. So just trying to tweak it here so we can find a happy medium and look for the advice of Mr. Colburn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scryer. Councillor Olson, please.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you very much for your presentations. I had a question of clarification. You're asking for 2 positions now, but you've obviously referred to a 3rd position, and I'm just wondering, is the approval process to the developer, to the development officer, you've been alluding to in the developer's agreement that it would be to a maximum of 3 positions? So what I'm getting at is I wouldn't want, if it's approved in that, I wouldn't want you to have to go back in a year to get rezoning again to add to it or change the developer's agreement. So I just want to make sure that that's included.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Mr. Colburn, please.
Through you, Your Worship, to councillors, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Olson, we can move forward as a neighborhood commercial, present it to the public under the public hearing process that the rezoning to neighborhood commercial will be for the purposes of a medical clinic with up to 3 physicians. So if that gets approved, then if there's another physician that comes on a year from now, they do not have to come back to council. Right? We could extend that to 4 physicians if that's the desire of council as a condition of rezoning, and it's advertised that way to the public. And if there are no concerns from the public, or if there are concerns and they can be mitigated, you could say that this particular property is neighborhood commercial for a medical clinic up to 4 physicians. So there is flexibility in the final decision and what that will look like. Okay? If there's still a desire after we go through this process to revisit and maybe make it central commercial, within the next couple of years, we're going to be up for a municipal plan review. We're going to be up for zoning bylaw amendments and such, is something that we could look at in the future through that process. So there are ways that we can move this application forward. I feel address the desires in terms of making room for additional physician, and then possibly revisit central commercial zoning at a later date. Or if we go back, if we're going to move for central rezoning at this point in time, we would have to go to get make sure direction from the solicitor, who may say, no, you have to start this process all over again, which means we're back to where we were a month, 5 weeks ago. So your timeline is now projected out 4 or 5 weeks. To move it along and to not stay where we are, I believe it would be prudent to simply go through the neighborhood commercial, set a reasonable limit in terms of the number of positions, 3, 4, and then possibly revisit in the future in terms of central commercial zoning.
Thank you. You have a follow-up question, Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Worship. That's the point that I was getting at, Mr. Colburn, that you don't want to have to come back to fix something that was just approved. So you're looking at maximum of 3 now. You got lots of room. You know, you might want to go to 4, a year and a half, 2 years down the road. So you can think about that. But it's a good positive move. Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Luck, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I did remember my question. So it's along the same lines as Councillor Olson in terms of the 2 versus the 3, or even potentially the 4. So I guess I just want to make sure we set, I mean, we don't want to delay this, but we also want to make sure we set this up. I'm guessing there's a cost every time someone wants to come and apply for rezoning. So again, there's cost associated with it versus doing it right the first time. So I guess I'm not really sure what the solution is, but I also want to make sure if we go with the neighborhood commercial and put a limit, there's definitely wiggle room, because they definitely are thinking 3 already. So, I mean, I'd be more comfortable with 4 to give them wiggle room. But then also I'm wondering how restrictive that is if they decide they want an allied health professional or someone else working in the evening, let's say, you know, renting out one of their rooms, like a massage therapist or something like that. You know, does that neighborhood commercial limit their opportunity to build their business and practice?
Thank you, Councillor Luck. Councillor Miller, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We've gone around a few things here, so I'm just going to ask the question to the 2 doctors. If the suggestion that I'm hearing here is if whatever we call it neighborhood, or if you had 4, to me that's the magic number, then you're good for the next forever. If 4 is the answer and it expedites everything, I'm just trying to ask.
Yeah, ideally, we have it rezoned so that we can start practicing as soon as possible and start our renovations, right? So that's priority number 1 for sure. Whatever means we need to take to be able to practice medicine, we will, you know, move forward with at this point. To Councillor Luck's points again, like having a degree of flexibility and freedom in having this zoned for commercial use centrally would be our priority. That would be our goal. And it is a little bit frustrating that the application that was submitted by us was for central commercial, and we only learned on seeing the agenda tonight that that wasn't what was on your agenda. So, you know, we're kind of pivoting with you back and forth, trying to understand what the pros and cons of this are. But to your point, yes, like if you were to say you would have the ability to have up to maybe say 4 health professionals working out of, you know, the building, then that could be something that we could work with. But again, like our priority would be to not have to come back, not have to submit another application, and just be able to get back to our regular lives. That would be our preference.
Thank you. Mr. Colburn, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. So an important point to make and to keep in mind from a council perspective is even when you go through every rezoning and the designation that's put on that land through that rezoning process, there is a development agreement. The Community Planning Act says you rezone a piece of land subject to terms and conditions which are entered into an agreement. So even if you change it to central commercial, there's still a development agreement which puts terms and conditions on the use of the land, right? So if you go and look at that particular piece of land and you say, okay, you're going to go to 4 physicians, then you have to look at the capacity. Can you provide enough parking for 4? What are the other elements as you increase the use and the use of that land? How much can you actually, you know, how many other physicians can you put in there, right? So it's just not sort of the terminology. It's looking at what is the overall capacity, what as you increase the capacity or you increase the use of the land, whether there are impacts it as of on a residential neighborhood around it, right? So whether it's neighborhood commercial or it's central commercial, there's a development agreement that goes with that rezoning, and it's the crux of that development agreement that stipulates how you can use that land, right? In this particular case, we can, to me, again, it goes back to, I believe we can move forward as neighborhood commercial. Council has the authority to set terms and conditions in a development agreement that both parties would enter into. If that says you can have up to 3 physicians or 4 physicians, then that's the conditions under which you operate. Even if it goes to central commercial and you say, okay, it is a professional medical office, you can still restrict the total number of physicians and the use of that land. So whether central commercial or neighborhood commercial, it's the development agreement that ultimately guides or dictates how that land is used moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. And of course, the greater the number of physicians or health care workers would also often have an impact on the parking area as well, which would have an impact on the nearby community. So I'm going to go to Councillor Donovan, Deputy Mayor Squire, because he hasn't had a turn to speak yet, and then I'll come back to you.
Thank you. I'm just a little confused. I don't understand, if the developers, the 2 doctors had come to us and submitted an application for central commercial. I don't understand why it was changed at some point. I don't know, maybe it was a beneficial thing. Mr. Colburn might have changed it to speed things along, but I guess in my opinion, if a developer comes to the town and wants a certain, zoning, then I believe it should go through that zoning to what they want and shouldn't be changed. So I guess I'm just kind of unsure at what point it was changed and, maybe why it was changed. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Donovan. Did you want to respond to that, Mr. Colburn?
Thank you, Your Worship. So when the initial discussion was regarding the use of the land and going to a medical facility, I believe there was some miscommunication between the town or planning staff and the applicants in terms of under central commercial zone, our current zoning bylaw actually doesn't outright state a medical facility or medical clinic. The term that's used in the zoning bylaw is an office. That's it. Neighborhood commercial actually says a land use that is permitted is a medical office for up to 2 physicians. It also says you can have an engineering office with up to 2 practicing engineers. It also says you can have an accountant's office with up to two accountants. So when the request was made that we're looking at purchasing the land and setting it up for 2 doctors, we look at what the current use is. Okay, there's already a business in there. 2 physicians, well, that automatically lines up with the current use provisions under a neighborhood commercial. That was the fitting. Okay, so there may have been some miscommunication in terms of central commercial application and our presentation of neighborhood commercial application, which again, it goes back to we're going through a rezoning process. Council has the authority to say, yes, you can have more than 2 physicians. The key item is that it's presented to the public, and what the information that goes to the public for public notice states that this land is being rezoned to neighborhood commercial for up to 3 physicians. The public receives that information, they have an opportunity to provide their comments back.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. Did you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
I guess I'm just curious as to, if it was decided that it was going to change from central commercial to neighborhood commercial, maybe why the applicants weren't informed of that ahead of time, potentially.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, I believe it may have been through miscommunication or misunderstanding. I was under the impression that they were aware that it was going for neighborhood commercial. And again, if that was miscommunication or misunderstanding, I do apologize. And it was an oversight maybe on our part. But in terms of the way we reviewed the requests and we compared it against the zoning bylaw, we felt that that was the best option to move the application forward. Again, I go back to, I feel that this isn't an item that would stay where we are in this process. I think it's important to move it along and then perhaps look at central commercial rezoning at a future date.
Thank you, Mr. Colburn. I'm going to turn over now to our clerk, Ms. Snow.
Yes, through you, Your Worship. Further to Mr. Colburn's comments, I would just like to note that there is legislative public notices required for this evening's public presentation as well. And I see our notice that, that we've placed on our website does reference the neighborhood commercial, and it also notes permission to permit a third physician at the location. So if we did go to something else, we probably would have to start the public presentation process again. But the ad does note 3 physicians up to.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Schreier.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to the clerk for that clarification. And that's, I guess, just my question to the applicant as to what they would like to do. If they want to move forward with a central commercial, then I think what we're hearing very clearly is that we have to start from the scratch again. Or if we do go through with the neighborhood commercial, under the developer's agreement, as Mr. Colburn has stated, there's things that we can address within the developer's agreement. So I think it's important that we clear this up right now before we move go any further as to what you would like to do.
We'd like to go through with a neighborhood commercial designation, as it's stated. Yep, thank you.
Thank you. You had a follow-up, Deputy Mayor?
No, I'm just wondering if we have a motion for that?
Yes, we do. On the question. So it's been moved by Councillor Locke, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. On the question, Deputy Mayor Schreier.
No.
Councillor Locke.
Worship, I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep beating this, but I guess in terms of timeline, just because again, out of principle, they wanted central commercial. And I know we're worried about delaying the process. So we definitely don't want to delay the process. So if we have to go to neighborhood, if that's their wishes, that's great. But the public hearing isn't till the 17th. So in reality, would we be able to redo the process, have the public presentation at our next council meeting on the 20th, and still make it in time with the announcements and stuff for the 17th? Like, I know that we're trying to minimize work, and I appreciate that, but at the end of the day, if truly their goal was to get central commercial, because of miscommunication, I guess, again, it's more work on their part in the future if they want a 4th physician, because we've already advertised as 3, so we can't even add that extra 4th one in now. It's more cost to them, it's more time for them. I'd like them, as they said, I want them focusing on taking care of patients. So I guess I'm just wondering from our perspective, is getting it rezoned central commercial and going through the process, could we still make it for the 17th, like the public hearing? Could we tick all the boxes that need to be ticked and the notices and still keep it on schedule, I guess, before we decide on the neighborhood? I'm just curious.
Thank you. I'm going to have our clerk speak to that for the timelines.
Yes, Your Worship. There are legislated timelines too, like must advertise within 21, not more than 30 days, that sort of thing. And if I think we could probably just barely do it if we get it tomorrow for the public presentation. That's 14 days. And, but then 21 and 30 days for the public hearing on the 17th. If our planning officer is in agreement with the CC zoning.
Thank you. Mr. Colburn.
Through you, Your Worship, to the clerk. So on January the 17th, it would be the public presentation because council only has one meeting in January. So the opportunity you would have to do a public presentation again, which would be, so you're saying December 20th?
Go ahead.
Yes, if we place that ad tomorrow morning, it would have to go.
Through you, your worship, from a planning perspective, if the applicant wishes to move forward with potential commercial and the timelines can allow, then we can move the application under central commercial. Again, it is important to note that once it goes out to central commercial, that you're opening yourself up to other permitted uses, which in some cases the public perceives as having more impacts. However, if the applicant wishes to move forward as central commercial, then, and the timelines permit, then I have no objections to moving the application forward under that provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coburn. Ms. Snow?
Your worship, through you, if that is the case, the motion should just be changed to council to set a public presentation date for the December 20th meeting at 6 p.m. And that the change from residential R1 to commercial, central commercial.
Thank you, Ms. Snow. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, your worship, through, I just would like to know if the doctors are okay with us.
If it's not going to delay the process, we were hoping that the rezoning would be finalized. The projected timeline was sometime mid-March, was what we were hoping for. So under the understanding that that timeline would stand, then that would be ideal for us. But if it's thought that that's an unrealistic expectation as far as timeline goes, the last thing that we want to happen at this point is for there to be delays. So I would defer to, this is not, something I'm experienced with as far as how things go and what the timelines are, but our understanding of the rezoning process when we started this was that mid-March was a realistic expectation.
Thank you, Doctor. The motion has been moved by Councillor Locke, seconded by Deputy Mayor Scryer. On the question, and I believe we're going to change that. So you can refresh your... There you go. Madam Clerk, would you like to read the motion hasn't changed.
Has been changed, moved by Councillor Luck, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. Council set a second public presentation date for December the 20th at 6 p.m. Change in the rezoning requests from residential R1 to commercial CC, which is central commercial.
On the question, please vote now. You're in favor? She's in favor. Motion carried 7-0. Thank you very much, Dr. Monica and Dr. Natalie. Public hearings, there are none. Item number 7, minutes of the previous meeting, 7A, November 17th, 2022, regular meeting. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
So moved.
Minutes of the previous meeting have been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Donovan. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item number 8, unfinished business. Moving on to item number 9, correspondence. Item 9A, recommendation from nominating committee, reappointment to Kennebecasis Valley Fire Department, Incorporated Board of Directors. Councillor Donovan.
Thank you. I would move that council accept the nominating committee's recommendation to appoint Ms. Patricia Murray to the Kennebecasis Valley Fire Board effective January 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2023 to complete the term of her predecessor, at which time the nominating committee will consider renewing her term for a further 3-year appointment.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Schreier. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item 9B, Mr. Hatfield, Mark Hatfield, Property Star Inc., in attendance, request to extend Serenity Heights Subdivision Phase 1 Development Agreement. Staff report from Mark Morrison, Engineering Manager. Good evening, Mr. Hatfield.
Just looking to extend our Serenity Heights Phase 2, or Phase 1, sorry. We're at the point now, we only have about 2 lots left, so it's not the point of trying to sell the lots, the point of getting them built. So we have 2 on the waiting list, and we just hold a 3rd lot, so we have 3 on our waiting list now to build, so they're coming right along, and just wanted to extend it till next September 30th, I do believe is what's on the application.
Thank you. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. After reading the reports related to this, I'm ready to make a motion, and if that's appropriate.
Move forward with that, please.
Whereas the developer has been showing consistent progress, testing results, and site visits have been favorable, I move council grant an extension to the developer's agreement of the Serenity Heights Subdivision Phase 1B from the February 4th, 2023 date to September 1st, 2023.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Bigger, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, Councillor Olson.
No, nothing.
Seeing that there are no questions, please vote now. No, she excused herself. Motion carried 6-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Hatfield. Have a good evening. Item 9C, Robert Bigger, developer, Maple Ridge Subdivision Phases 1, 1B, 2A, 2B, and 3A, all the way to DA extension. Staff report from Mark Morrison, Engineering Manager. Councillor Luck.
I'd like to make the motion, Your Worship, that council accept Mr. Morrison's recommendation to grant an extension to the development agreements of the Maple Ridge Subdivision Phases 1, 1B, 2A, 2B, and 3A to September 1st, 2023, with all the outstanding work is to be completed.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. It's been moved by Councillor Luck, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the question, Councillor Olson, did you have a question on that? No? Okay. Please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. On to item number 10, bylaws. 10A, bylaw number 063, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting tourism accommodation levy. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move first reading be given to bylaw number 063, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting the tourism accommodation levy.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Miller on the question. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question in regards to the definition. Under tourism accommodation, it lists, temporary sleeping accommodation for the public for a continuous period not exceeding 31 days, and it has an extensive list. And I was surprised that I didn't see Airbnbs. And I guess that would be my one question or suggestion, only because they are quite popular. And I know that it's not an extensive list, but because they're so common, it would be really nice to have them in if they are something that's included in this, just so there's no gray area. So that was, I guess, my question comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luck. I'm going to turn to Mr. Kennedy, our acting CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Luck. Thanks for the question, and it's a legitimate question as well, and one that we had raised as we were forming this bylaw. And I don't really have an answer to it other than that this bylaw was modeled after the bylaws that were created by the City of Fredericton and by the City of St. John, and they do not have Airbnbs in there either. And even sort of the bed and breakfasts are things, even though it's in the bylaw at this point in time, it's my understanding that St. John is charging they're not charging, they're requiring hotel and motel operators to pass the tourism levy on to their customers, and they are not looking at bed and breakfasts at this time. So I think that might require a little more investigation as to why the other bigger cities haven't done that, when they would obviously have more Airbnbs than we would have. But that's something that we could certainly explore to see why they aren't doing it and why might make sense for us to follow that or not. But at this point in time, the bylaw that's before council tonight is really modeled after the two larger cities. And this was presented to us through Envision as well, that this is something that was required as part of the members' agreement by the end of 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Bigger, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The bylaw does require it to be read if we move ahead tonight, is that right?
Next week.
Or is it the next meeting?
It's for the next one, but we have been advertising, placing a public notice so that council members would not have to read the bylaw. We summarize it in a notice on our website. Well, we'll get that notice published.
Thank you, Ms. Snow. So it's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Miller on the question. Please vote now. Motion carries 7-0. Councillor Olson.
Yes, I would move on behalf of council, second reading be given to bylaw number 063, a bylaw of the municipality of Quispamsis respecting the tourism accommodation levy.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Miller on the question. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a question about process, especially since this could potentially be a popular bylaw. I know that we post, because we have to, based on the Municipalities Act, publicly post so many days out before the third reading. And I'm just wondering, especially now that we have a communications person in place, if there's any appetite to actually start using Facebook, because I know typically we have plans to kind of revamp our website. It's a little bit hard to find stuff. And I'm just wondering, if we could start to use Facebook, because I think a lot more of our residents interact with Facebook, and if it would be an opportunity to do our public post using that form of
We could certainly look at it. Social media, but the Act actually requires that we post on our website or local newspapers. It's quite specific as to where, but not saying we couldn't expand notices to social media, other areas too.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Miller. On the question, please vote now. Motion carries 7-0. On to item 10B, 929 Hampton Road, cancellation of zoning bylaw amendment number 038-30 and associated development agreement, Harrison Rebar. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that council cancel the zoning bylaw amendment 08-30, a notwithstanding clause permitting Harrison Rebar Incorporated to operate a rebar fabrication facility at 929 Hampton Road, PID number 301-78727, and associated development agreement as per the motion and resolution of council on May 7th, 2019.
It's been moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Bigger. On the question, please vote now. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 11, new business. 11A, tender number 2022 TQ 10-31, supply and install of plow equipment. Looking for a motion on that, please. Deputy Mayor Scryer, please read the motion.
Yes, Your Worship. Council award tender number 2022 TQ10-31 for the supply and installation of plow equipment to the sole bidder Applied Pressure Inc. for the bid price of $409,900 plus HSD. Once the final project costs are accounted, any project costs beyond the current allocated budget will be directed from any budget surplus in 2023 or can be redirected from capital reserve funds.
Thank you. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer, seconded by Councillor Olson. On the motion, on the question. Deputy Mayor Scryer.
Yes, Your Worship, just through you to the treasurer. I'm just wondering about the redirection of funds, and so it would go to capital reserve opposed to operating? I guess because it's an actual vehicle?
Through Your Worship to Deputy Mayor. So it's a capital item, so we have our operating fund separate from our capital fund. And so it would come from the capital reserve if there was any sort of extra piece that needed to come with it, and it would come before you as kind of part of our year-end process, which you'll see at our next council meeting, because I'm pulling out my magic 8-ball as we speak now. And we're going through and doing our projections and doing all our reserve transfers. So it would kind of be accounted for at the year end. So all of these that say it's over budget, and we have a lot of them, I keep, record of, and then at year end when we're looking to fund, then we'll do kind of motions to make sure that everything is funded.
Thank you, Ms. Brandon. It's been moved by Deputy Mayor Scryer and seconded by Councillor Olson. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Item 12, reports. Councillor Donovan, please.
I'd move that the reports be received and filed.
It's been moved by Councillor Donovan, seconded by Councillor Luck. On the question, please vote now. Motion carried 7-0. Business arising from Committee of the Whole. Don't believe there was any. Looking for an adjournment. I hope everybody finds joy during this busy time of year. Lots of fun things to do. It's been moved by Councillor Olson that we adjourn, and it has been seconded by Councillor Luck. On the question. Seeing there are none, please vote now. Councillor Miller? Motion carried 7-0. Have a nice evening, everybody. Safe travels home.